Why struggle through a post-merger integration when you can glide through it? Why deal with the PMI integration challenges when you can overcome them even before they occur? Why move slow when you can move at pace? What are the world's leading PMI experts doing right now to achieve profit-accelerating integrations? This podcast will give you all the answers to these questions and many more. My name is Dudley Peacock, and welcome to the 100 Days and Beyond podcast. All right, welcome everyone to our latest episode of 100 Days and Beyond, where we speak to the fraternity that are involved with mergers, acquisitions, post-merger integrations, post-acquisition integrations, and all the business stuff that happens around those wonderful areas, the work streams all the way through to marketing, sales, and all the fancy schmancy things that we think are unreachable and untouchable. But here in this channel, we speak to the real people behind the scenes, the guys that make things happen. And I believe, just like anything, if you stick to it and if you work very hard at what you do, you become better. And the more experience you have, the stronger you become at your skill set. Today we've got Jon Burke. Jon is a marketing director, commercial leader, M&A integrating businesses and teams. Okay, so let's just focus a bit on that. And we say consultant, speaker, digital marketing, brand management, IPO, and investor relations. So I'm going to go through a brief little bit of your summary, Jon, and then we're going to go straight into it. So a commercially minded, customer-focused marketing leader with over 20 years international experience in multi-channel marketing, M&A integration, sales management, and team realignment, covering technology, software, and smart products, industrial goods, and consumer durables with both B2B and B2C markets. Jon, great to have you on the show. Thank you very much. You come with a great pedigree, and we had a quick chat the other day. And I thought that made for some really good content, and I'm hoping we could have a really good session today. I'm sure we will. And with your background,
thank you, Dudley.
and with your background and with your knowledge, I'm sure you'll add massive value to our audience. Again, welcome to the audience. Welcome, Jon. Jon, let's kick off. Let's get a bit of background. Get your story. Get to where you come from, and how did you end up in this world?
Right. Thanks, Dudley. Thanks for that introduction. So I've been working in sales and marketing for, as long as I care to remember, really, from a professional point of view. But when it comes to all things M&A, in particular post-acquisition integration, I worked corporate side for a number of years. I spent 6 years of a business that did on average about 6 to 8 deals a year. And I would spend a lot of my time initially on the communication side, initially announcing the deal, communicating some of the benefits of it, producing things like town hall events, FAQs, bringing people up to speed, both on the acquired target side and in the parent company in terms of the benefits of the deal, that sort of thing. And it quickly became apparent that while a lot of emphasis, as I'm sure you know, a lot of emphasis is put on the cost saving sides, in particular areas such as HR, ERP solutions, finance, IT, that sort of thing. But my focus on the commercial side with sales and marketing was really about revenue generation. So we've bought access to new technologies or access to new markets and segments and industry types, but how are we actually going to leverage that in order to grow into new markets with both the parent and the new acquired business working together going forward? There's obviously also challenges to work out with regards to sales team structures, compensation, branding, marketing, to name but a few. Sales team realignments. You often, and a number of times I would come across situations where we often would have sales teams together that up until that point had been competing against each other. So these are the sorts of things you have to address in the real world. But people, aren't silly. They take these things in their stride, and you treat them as adults, and you work these things through.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right, especially taking the art and science of sales and marketing. It's that It's that special place where some fear to tread and others really relish the opportunity to deal with generating new work, building customer relationships, and so on, and even hunting new business. I mean, your profile talks a lot about, I think, in terms of gives you the background of being that marketing and sales expert, the guy that can understand the big picture. But I'm guessing also you've done your fair share in the trenches too, to know and to understand what goes on per salesperson, per marketing individual for each one of those departments, and what are the dynamics that make them effective and produce the results. Because it's one thing to buy in a new team, but do you know how to really harness it? Sometimes it's like herding cats, I think, sometimes working with salespeople. That's maybe a bit of an unfair statement, because they are quite focused, and many of them are very ambitious individuals. But there could also be things like territory battles. Who owns which customer? Now we had a joint account. We were up against you in for this particular account. I won it sometimes, you won it the other time. Now who gets it? I mean, there must be some interesting conversations that happen around it. I just want to just throw that curveball in there, and maybe there's a bit of a dynamic you can share with us there.
Yeah, that's a good question, Dudley. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things you've touched on. One that immediately springs to mind is when buying one particular company. In fact, a number of times this has happened. You try and transpose your sales processes to the required business, and almost exclusively, almost every time, the initial response is, well, that's not the way things work here. Our market's a bit different. Our customers like to do things in a different way. All of those sorts of responses that really essentially what they're saying, but in different language, is they're resistant to change. So it's like any good change management program. It's about quality communication. It's about outlining and making really clear what that end state is, so people can buy into the vision. And even before you talk about the end state and the journey and the destination, you start off with why the deal took place in the first place. What was that rationale? A good acquirer, a good parent, certainly from a corporate side, that is building businesses alongside its traditional organization, they'll always have like an M&A plan, the types of businesses they like to look out for. And in that way, it can be seen as a really positive experience and a really positive engagement, as this is the reason why the business is so attractive. We're now part of a bigger business that gives us access to new technologies, new capital, new resources that allow the business to grow in ways that perhaps they've struggled with in the past, that sort of thing. And when you give people that messaging, and then continue to reinforce that as you celebrate new wins, new opportunities, people coming on board, yes, you will get natural people moving on because they don't believe that their career perhaps is part of that. And there's all sorts of interesting conversations where you have one-to-one people realizing that perhaps this is not for them. But the reality is, the people who stay are, as you touched on, ambitious. They see it as an opportunity to grow their career, gain new responsibilities, and expand going forward. And they want to be part of that journey individually as well as within the wider corporate context. You're mute.
Let me just try the unmute. Today is just a technical, yeah. Today's just
number one selling mug since lockdown, right?
Yeah. You should have that as your logo. I'm just thinking about the technology challenges. When we look at salespeople and what we're trying to do is when we're doing integrations and so on, much of the relationship, let's call it, and much of the knowledge, intellectual property, when you're having salespeople and marketing people and so on, have been part of an ecosystem for some time. They've built relationships. They've grown an understanding of their current market. Obviously, they build a particular lens and sometimes blinkers, but they have a way of looking at the world. But they also have a way in which they operate. Now, sometimes in sales and marketing environments, you have the data as where is it kept? Is it up to date? is my relationship information up to date? Where do I put it, and so on? Now you're joining two entities. One may be heavily driven around administration, capturing information in a really good maybe CRM or whatever system they've got, and another one that may be a lot looser in terms of the data management, and they're more relationship oriented. They're much more into the golfing and the cricket and all those, the more, let's call it event based, where you have others that are probably more structured in terms of sales processes and so on. Do you ever see dynamic like that differs in terms of a continuum, if I had to put it like that, in terms of styles in the industries that you've worked?
Yeah, you're always going to get to a point where the acquired businesses, you're going to want to get them onto your tech platforms pretty quickly. And that can be anything from MarTech through and CRM through to account systems and ERP. But from a sales and marketing point of view, giving your salespeople access to the right tools in a timely manner is really, really crucial. And alongside that, you want to train them. You want to understand how they use their data. And the number of times where actually we've learned from the clients or the companies we've acquired by finding out new ways in which they've made the most of their data to grow their business, that's made them so attractive in the first place. And that's a nice learning curve as well, because it enhances the performance then of not only the parent, but the other business units within the parent company as well. So we're always looking to see how we can improve solutions. I've been consulting now for over 4 years, and the clients I've worked with in various different industry sectors are always looking for ways in which they can optimize their own performance through the companies that they've acquired. So they're never looking to have a point of stasis where they say, we know what we're doing all the time. We like to take the best of both worlds and look at continual improvement. But ultimately, what you are looking to get to is a point where everybody's working off the same system, dealing with the same data in a consistent manner, so that you can then reach out to target audiences and existing customers to grow your revenue using a similar approach where appropriate with your target audiences.
Yeah, because often, one of your specialities is strategic marketing management, and often data is a way that you can say, okay, this is a way I can predict pipeline future sales, because you potentially have to go back and report back to somebody and they would say, what are we expecting in terms of a result next month, next year? What's the pipeline looking like? And so on. So in terms of leadership, you want good data, you want clean data, and you want to be able to have some kind of ability to predict. And I imagine part of an integration would be to try and align these as quick as possible. Just maybe share some of your insights on that.
Yeah, no, really critical piece of information we look to try and understand when we're dealing with new acquisitions from a sales point of view is how good is their forecasting accuracy. It's all well and good having access to all this data, but what do you do with it? And let's say you have to report on a quarterly basis and forecast how you're going to perform. And then the ideal is that you'll come either bang on target or slightly above. And if you're a little bit below, then that's within a margin of tolerance. But you don't want to get to a point where you're suddenly exceeding forecast by 40%, because the operation may not be geared up to actually accommodate performance so far above the forecasting. So the way in which businesses run means that they need to have as accurate a forecast as possible. And from a sales point of view, when you're dealing with sales leaders of acquired businesses, you want to have their credibility established by their ability to deliver the forecast that they say they're going to do on time, and regularly keep you updated on any surprises, any new projects that might come in that explode the forecast, so we can gear up for it. I've just finished a project with an oil and gas business that had exactly that issue, where capacity was such that they had to manage their forecasts, and if something was going to come in 20% over, they didn't have the capacity if they weren't given enough notice to manage that. So it was really important that sales leaders manage their forecasts, stick to them, and communicate in any plus or minuses in a timely manner on that. And that's something we look for in a lot of detail with our target companies. How good are you at your forecasting? Because that helps us to manage the business going forward.
In your opening section, you spoke about doing sort of 6 to 8, or being part of an organization that did. between 6 and 8 new acquisitions a year. I'm guessing it's not perfectly timed either. I'm guessing there will be a few bunched together, and then there'll be a bit of a gap and a few bunched together. But I mean, cumulatively, that must put quite a strain on a team that has to be involved in that whole thing. Tell me about sort of what happens behind the scenes when yet another acquisition is announced, or now we're going to go in this direction, we're going to add this in there. Tell me a bit about what happens behind the scenes of an organization that's, let's call it, a serial acquirer, from an integration point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So the thing to bear in mind at the starting point is that the people you're dealing with already have a day job, and that is to manage their department, be it HR, sales, operations, etc. So they've already got a business that they've got to maintain, and teams to manage, processes, etc., and growth targets, and all of that sort of thing. And then suddenly you slap on their desk the announcement of an acquisition, and all of the process that then follow alongside that, getting new teams on board, updating org charts, understanding new processes, all of these sorts of things have to be managed alongside somebody's already full day job. So what we wanted to do when I was on corporate side in corporate development, but also now as a consultant, is to work alongside those team leaders to help them manage that extra workload in a way that made it manageable, a good project management process, using the PMO approach or IMO from an integration point of view, but making sure that there's a defined process that you can just repeat on a regular basis. It's repeatable. The milestones and the key gateways and the 90-day, 100-day plan is all already defined. So again, you're kind of going through the motions. That familiarity of doing six deals in a 12-month cycle is clear. And like you say, it's never every 2 months. You might have 1 month where you announce 2 deals, then 3 months nothing, and then another 2 or 3 deals announced. But as people get familiar with the processes and you guide them through that, you help take some of the work off their desk to make sure that the integrations are managed, then all of that sort of thing can be accommodated. But yes, there's always a few moments where extra grey hairs appear. The other key thing is to be aware of what the strategy is for each of the 6 different businesses, for example. One strategy might be full absorption. We're just going to take all the brand out. We're going to fully absorb the business in. We're literally just acquiring market share. We might be handling a couple of key accounts in a different way, but generally speaking, it's business as usual for this business. So we're going to impose our approach to them. With others, it might be hands-off approach. We want a slightly more light touch approach, where they continue to operate because of the way the markets they're in. A good example of that was with the business I worked with. We acquired a business that was very heavily involved in defense and aerospace. And that was a market where there was all sorts of not only security, but regulatory concerns. So we made sure that there was as much as possible a ring fencing, but the financing and some of the HR processes behind that and IT were integrated where we felt that didn't pose a risk to security or regulatory requirements. So the strategy for each business needs to be clearly defined when you announce. So obviously you'll have a public announcement, you'll have an all hands within the business announcement, but then you'll get your leaders together and get into the detail of what you're looking to achieve and what their expectations are, and then they can be clear then on the impact that will have on their workload. And again, that's where we come in to help them through that, to take some of the challenges off their desk. So, for example, from a sales and marketing point of view, I'd get involved in looking at the new sales teams you brought on board, identifying who really good, talented people are you don't want to leave. What does a future org state look like? Does the go-to-market approach change depending on the new businesses required? All of that sort of thing, I can take a fresh view on. And ideally, you've kind of answered some of those questions. Certainly on the go-to-market approach, you want to have an idea of that once you've agreed your letter of intent.
Yeah, and what's interesting, and I think you raised a really good point now, and that is that that what level of integration am I doing? Am I doing it? Is it shallow? I mean, am I just taking on a portion? Am I just bringing some revenue but leaving the business alone, or am I doing some kind of deep integration? And then I look at one of your specialities where you talk about e-commerce and SEO and so on. And now we're talking about sort of let's call them digital assets and so on. So now you got multiple entities, or even just one or two entities joining. They would have spent, let's call it, I don't know if they always call it spending, but they would have invested a lot of money on SEO, on building these digital assets, getting some kind of visibility digitally, the ease for a customer or a supplier or somebody or a stakeholder to find them online. If it's e-commerce, you're also looking at fulfillment and all the things that happen behind e-commerce. E-commerce is not just a screen with a store and a payment gateway. E-commerce has got something to do with the delivery of the items too, and also making sure that those, the distribution and all that kind of thing also works. So coming back to the sort of the digital assets, e-commerce, SEO, and that, now you're joining a number of entities. You would have to bring, I would imagine, a lot of those specialities together in the room to see how you could start, I don't know if splicing is the right word, but trying to bring together a lot of that hard work and let's call it momentum that's already been built around those hard-won infrastructures. Because e-commerce is not something you just plug and play. It's something, these often have many images, for instance. They've got lots of data in them. They've got customer journeys, if you like. They've got potentially behind the scenes, you've got all these customers or let's call them customers that are still parts of a buying journey, or they're on a subscription, or they're on a repeat, and now you're buying multiple entities. I mean, this whole thing is a little bit more complicated than just sort of let's just sort of join the systems. Tell us a little bit about your experience around e-commerce and SEO and all these digital things that especially the Gen Zs and millennials have grown up with. I mean, I want to know what your view on the world of that is.
Sure, Dudley. So I spent 18 months on a business-to-business distribution company project where they'd acquired about 24 companies within that period of time, or slightly before as well, before I picked up the project. And about 40% of their activity was done online. So you're talking about a significant digital web shop presence, but also, highly optimized SEO, that sort of thing. So you are looking, again, really early on, what is the end game? Where do you want to be? Are you looking at ultimately having one web shop that's global but segmented with geographic access and that sort of thing, and geographic different web shops appropriate? And what the approach we took was because of the research telling us that brands were so important to them in each particular market, and all of the keyword work that had gone in beforehand, the web shops were the position we took was that the web shops will be locally branded to suit the needs of the particular market, but everything back office in terms of customer journey, the way in which the shop operated, the look and the feel was all consistent across all the different group businesses. And with some of the businesses, we took the plan that over 6 or 12 months they would eventually rename to become part of the new parent. But in other instances, we will retain the local name, but we'll just make sure that the customer journey was the same, whichever country you were in, whichever web shop you were on. The ease of searching for particular products, the ease of contacting people if you had a query to chase deliveries, or finding the latest status on your order, checkout, refunds, all of those sorts of things were consistent across the different geographic businesses. We had a centralized kind of digital hub where all of the expertise was gathered, and we made sure we deployed that to each of the the acquired businesses. In terms of things like SEO rankings, you certainly don't want to lose what you've built up over the time with an acquired business. So you make sure that over time you migrate that into new keywords. You do all sorts of backlinking to redirects and all of the relevant SEO optimization tricks to make sure that when you get to that point where you migrate from one domain to another, it's as seamless as possible. But over time, you can make sure that that's done in a way that mitigates any risk of loss of customers. And the key thing really there is about communication, making customers aware about the current name and where it's going to be, and let them know that the new brand will take place, and which web to go to in the future. But alongside that, being really good online across all of the different businesses it's really appropriate, particularly when you're in an age where you might deal with the same customer across multiple different geographies, like a food manufacturer, for example, or automotive, who will buy from you in the UK, France, Germany, and Poland, and they expect the same processes, they expect the same quality of customer service in all of the markets. And of course, perhaps the big one is consistency of pricing and product availability. So all of those things from an operational point of view have to run alongside that as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the pricing consistency, the deliverable consistency, and then also if you're buying competitors, competitor entities. I'm guessing different accounts and different account numbers, same company. So you got maybe a customer of this entity and a customer of that entity, but they have different account numbers. So you got to try and do a lot of merging of accounts, trying to find ways from a digital from a data point of view to bring things together. And also, I'm guessing there'll also be a spike in customer queries. You would probably have to, for a period of time, have additional support, to support desk people to handle any of those additional inquiries. So there's a lot of planning to be done. I mean, it's not that simple as you go into it. You have to think through all the possible things that could go wrong, and there could be a few blind spots along the way that you just didn't think about or didn't get to, and then it sort of creates a little fire there which may spread, and you want to try and contain it when it comes up. Have you got any war stories around that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good example, really, where marketing needs to work closely with IT, for example, on making sure that account numbers migrate, all of the back office IT functions still work that match one account number against another account number for the same business, to make sure that there's no seamless issues with regards to invoicing, order statements, and information getting out to the customer, that sort of thing. SKU numbers, again, making sure that they're consistent over time. But the real challenge there is making sure that the key account managers or sales managers who are in relationship with these customers are on a regular basis fully informed, so they can talk to their customers, give them the messages, give them really good FAQs, so that they can go into a meeting with their customer fully prepped to say, you know what, this is where we're at now, this is where we're going to be, this is how we're going to get there, and if you've got any questions, give me a call. I'll always be able to help you and talk you through any problems you've got. So with one particular project I worked on in food and beverage, where we had a company who would buy from us in about 20 countries. Again, we maintained regular contact with them, let them know where we were at with their data, how they could work with us, and how we could fully integrate seamlessly into their ERP as well, so that we continued to be easy for them to order from.
Yeah, because these days it's a world of EDI and full integration across different ERP systems in terms of ordering. You're trying to only, I think the term is manage by exception. You only want to manage the parts that go wrong as opposed to manage everything. And I'm guessing those are some of the principles that you'd be applying. I'm just want to shift into something that's also very interesting in terms of the specialities that you share in your LinkedIn profile, and that is sort of new product development, new sort of product launches to market, and that whole process. I mean, you're already now just trying to bring entities together, but let's say part of the synergy plan or the value creation plan was to now launch potentially new product into that existing customer base, or do the cross sell as everyone talks about. If I buy those customers and buy those customers, I can cross sell the products and services. How realistic is that in many respects, across multiple entities?
I mean, in terms of when it comes to acquisitions and justifying a new target, access to new technologies is right up there as one of the most popular and most important justifications. So when I was with my corporate work, we acquired, there's two companies that spring to mind actually in terms of technology we acquired, one of which not only gave us access to new technologies. So they had some really exciting technologies that integrated physical hardware with the cloud, so that a piece of hardware out in the field could literally be deleted and be turned into a dumb piece of equipment if it ever got lost or stolen, or you ever needed to replace it. So the ability to do that sort of thing suddenly opened up whole new markets for the parent company, but also for the company that had been acquired. They were very, very strong in food distribution. Their technology basically would go on any truck that carried food or any item of value, like, for example, mobile phones, in the distribution market. And it meant that you could locate any particular package anywhere geographically. And so the reverse of that was true. The parent was then able to sell new technologies and new solutions into that market as well, that in the past had been closed off to them. So there's always usually a reciprocal potential opportunity of cross-selling. But again, when you're introducing new technologies into a new market through acquisitions, that's really an exciting phase. There's lots to talk about, lots of successes. But what you need to do if you're the acquiring business is basically budget for it. It's going to take money. You are acquiring a business that you did with the technology that you then need to market. So you're not only budgeting for the acquisition, you're budgeting for basically a new product launch. But that's really, really exciting phase to go through.
Yeah, and I think a lot of underestimation that occurs happens a lot in the marketing launching of new products. In my experience, it often takes you longer than you think, and it takes you more money than you think, and it takes you more people than you think. Would that be a similar experience to what you have?
Yeah, definitely. All of that is true. Time, money, people. Yes, but and of course we have a tendency to overpromise perhaps and underdeliver, and that's just human nature, I guess, to a certain extent. But the key thing in my experience is to understand what your real absolute must-win achievements are, and make sure that they're your focus. So it's perhaps probably the 80-20 rule, right? Make sure that you focus on the really, really important 80%. Get those over the line in a timely manner. Fully understand not only your resources but your skills and capabilities. Are the people that we're bringing on board capable of taking this to the next step? If not, then we need to build a resourcing plan that does allow for that. Some of that can be done on a short-term basis, and that's perhaps where I come in on a consultancy and project basis. But other than that, other times you are recruiting full-time staff for the longer term. But certainly when you need to get something over the line in a timely manner, then yes, resource is a real challenge, and you need to make sure that you can resource up for it to a point where it becomes business as usual, and then perhaps that resource can just dial down a bit.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking about the people aspect. Now you got, especially sales in the B2B environment, you have salespeople that have got accustomed to particular products or demonstrations or things like that they're busy with, or they have got their customer base. All of a sudden you are expecting them that you might be adding additional sales quotas to them. You're adding additional requirement in terms of numbers they need to hit. So often out of a product maybe they might not be as passionate about. Tell me about the people dynamic, because I think sometimes the people dynamic around, I think salespeople have to be, and if you think about sales and marketing, they have to be passionate about what you're doing and how you present. You could be, you might as well send a video recorded clip of someone is much more effective than an unenthusiastic person trying to build a relationship. How do you deal with the culture, the human side of things of this whole change program that you talk about?
Yeah, so I've just worked with a number of sales teams actually in Europe, mainly Germany and the Benelux regions and France, where when we've acquired the businesses, you spend time to look at them and get a feel for their quality, their sales capabilities. Are they people that essentially sales is a transferable skill. So while you can have a passion for a particular range of products, these are people who are skilled at selling to people, opening doors and then closing and winning contracts. And so you want to see, are they capable of picking up either a competitor's product or a complementary product, and using that as a way to win new business, but obviously enhance their own particular comp plans, because of course ultimately they're in it for the bonuses and the commissions that come alongside that. So the good salespeople that we come across see this as an opportunity to earn more money, grow their career, close more deals, and perhaps even manage a sales team into a new region, for example. So we're looking for ambitious, driven salespeople who see this as an opportunity. Yes, there will be people who move on, perhaps less inclined to take the opportunity. But you know, the harsh reality of the business that we're in and the companies that are being acquired is we're looking to make the most of the sales teams we've got. And if there are opportunities to improve our sales teams, we will go and recruit those people as and when required, because we want to make sure that we have the best people selling the solutions going forward.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. A good salesperson is comfortable with taking on new challenges, and probably wants it, and probably is more excited because now they've got new things to sell, and there's a new shiny thing in them in their toolbox that they can hand out.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of the times, particularly when we're selling complementary products or offering complementary products to the sales teams, they see that as a real opportunity. You know, they use that then to go back to clients where they've struggled in the past, to close those deals that hadn't quite got over the line in the past, and they see that as real growth opportunity. And then the reverse being where they haven't been able to take something into the market, they've now got that extra solution to do that.
Well, it's an excuse to get hold of their existing customer base again,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
especially specialized.
So yeah, absolutely. Cross-selling and upselling are great opportunities for them to expand their revenue as well.
So let's go to some bigger picture things again. I mean, you mentioned, for instance, you mentioned things like branding and identity. I mean, those are often sort of difficult ones to really pin down. What's your method? I mean, what is your sort of go-to approach around branding and identity, and even sort of just trying to give people maybe a new sense of a collective? I don't know how to explain it because it's a little bit airy-fairy, but it becomes branding and identity. Again, I suppose it's communication and so on, but what is your sort of go-to method to bring together new people in that space?
Yeah, I mean, there's two schools of thoughts. I mean, if you think of from a consumer point of view, you can have businesses like Unilever that's basically house of brands, and it's all products that are branded in particular ways, and you would never consider bringing them all under one brand, but you would promote, let's say, Unilever, for example, or Procter and Gamble. But from a business to business point of view, I guess in an ideal world, all things being equal, you would have a situation where everything is under one brand, and then perhaps you might have business divisions and particular sub brands within that. But in the real world, that's not always easily achievable or even perhaps desirable. So to give you a really practical and real-time example, I'm working on a project at the moment where the parent company is buying a business in a completely different set of geographies and in a completely different industry sector. So it doesn't make any sense where the parent brand is not known in those new markets and new segments to rebrand in any time soon. But we do have a co-branding plan that over the next 12 to 18 months, target company will be known as Target plus Parent in some kind of mix formation. And that's literally going through as we speak. So investment will be made in a co-branding initiative that will then, over a period of time, morph into parent brand being very strong in this particular new set of geographies and markets. The key thing there, as in all things, is about in the planning and making sure that you know what your budget is, you know what your timelines are, what you need to do when. So that can take in everything from paperwork, stationery, brochures, through to all things digital and web branding, even down to office signage and the workwear people may be wearing. So once you take, let's say, an inventory or a stock take, so to speak, of all things that are branded in your target business, and then you put together a plan for the co-branding that then morphs into permanent branding, you can then take stock in terms of strategically is this the right thing to do? Which ones can we live without? What are the must-haves? You know, we must have, for example, ad campaigns that are branded appropriately, but could we get away with a warehouse for 18 months being outdated, that sort of thing? Those are the strategic decisions you can take once you know what the cost and resource implications are. So we're literally going through that as we speak, but in the end game is that in 18 months, the target business will be fully absorbed and rebranded. And as a result of that, the parent company will now have access into significant new geographies it never had before. But we obviously accept that that is going to take a little bit of time, money, and investment.
Yeah, because some branding and identity practitioners, they would they would prefer, let's say, a phased approach where you still have a dominant identity, for instance, and then it's sort of progressively, over multiple campaigns, there's more of an emphasis later on, and then the original sort of brand, if you like, identity starts to morph or disappear into the new sort of joint one. Or you just do the big bang and say, hey everybody, we've changed, and use it as another excuse. But I mean, I suppose there's different schools of thought, as you said.
Let me give you a really good example. One that we can, I think you may know about, but I'm sure many of our viewers will know, is Norwich Union were acquired by Aviva. And for about 2 years, it was called Norwich Union with Aviva as a sub-brand or a subscript underneath it. And then at some point in time, Aviva became Norwich Union. But for a period of time, there was an overlap. But everybody knew that Norwich Union was going to become Aviva. And it was a significant cost exercise, but it was well worth it because of the end game they wanted to get to. And it was done in a seamless way, so seamless that people still remember that Aviva used to be called Norwich Union and sometimes refer to them as such, but everybody knows that they are now Aviva. And so they go to the right website, they talk about it in the right way, and they have that association with Aviva and Norwich. But there was a point at time at which they wanted to undertake a rebrand approach. So they had Norwich Union, then the Norwich Union Aviva approach, and then they moved it into fully Aviva. And that's a perfectly sound integration strategy for rebranding.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's a great example, and it also helps just ease the stakeholders, especially customers, suppliers as well, I'm guessing, and a whole lot of people that the business depends on for its continuation. And also you want to keep attracting new talent. And you want to attract the brightest and best talent to any organization. And if it's looking like it's going all crazy and they're not sure about their own brand and identity, it could be a little bit scary for someone from the outside saying, hey, I would like to be employed by that company that's not quite sure who they are. And if you have a company that's got a proper brand and identity strategy, I think that's quite useful in many aspects. If I come back to some of the other points, what sort of stands out is sort of two words that I get bandied about a lot, and sometimes a bit cliche in a way, and that's the coaching and mentoring side of things. So during our careers, I mean, we all grow into certain things, and sometimes we have people that help us along the way. Now, it might not be formal coaching or mentoring or support or even having a buddy or an accountability partner or whatever people call it. There's all kinds of names for this kind of stuff. Can you recall any people in your journey in your life that sort of stood out and what they did? I mean, I have to name names. What I'm just saying is that has that been a factor in your life? Have you done a lot of this stuff on your own? Have you sought advice and support along the way?
Oh, always. I mean, I would highly recommend that people who want to get ahead in their career find somebody to be their mentor, because you want to be in a place where you can have safe conversations with people, to share ideas, to basically, vent perhaps if somebody's frustrating you in the work environment. You've got to go and unload to somebody who can then help you, to give you some guidance as to how to manage that in a constructive way that is not in any way negatively impacting your career. And also, I guess you want to talk to people who can help you take that next step, give you some guidance on what your direction is. And there are some really good kind of mentoring models out there to help you target what you want to achieve. I've had some really good relationships in the past, and I've got a couple of mentors now, in fact, still, who help me to just challenge, ask some probing questions. Why do you want to do this? Why are you thinking that particular way? Have you considered this approach? Have you considered looking at the problem from this angle? Those sorts of things. And then as you kind of think about what the next step in terms of my career, they can help you think about what your next step might be and how you might achieve that. And so it's really useful to have mentors for sure. I would never always recommend that the mentor is within the organization you're in, even though you can have those kind of confidential relationships, because of course, if you see yourself staying with a particular business, they can help you progress within the organization. But you always want to have a mentor outside of the business to give you perhaps a more broader view, the benefit of their experience in other industries and other segments, that sort of things, that can really help you kind of think about things in a wider perspective. And I've got a couple of people that I mentees for me, who I like to kind of just ask them the kind of questions I was being asked 10 years ago, so that they can have a think about their career. There's even something as simple as what should their LinkedIn profile look like, through to what kind of conversation should they be having at the coffee machine with somebody on the exec board team, and how they would go about that, through to when is the right time for them to look at another job elsewhere. I mentored somebody who ended up going from the commercial environment into academia. And you know what? At first, when they had that conversation with me as something they were considering, it was a bit of a curveball. But as I kind of thought about it and reflected on their personality and the type of person they were in their communication, actually that made so much sense, because they were not only a really, really good communicator and expert in their field, but they were the kind of people who liked to share it with others so that they could then take that knowledge themselves. So, and this person's now been working in a business school for 2 years, teaching corporate finance. So it's really been quite a good experience for me to be a mentor as well as to be mentored.
Yeah, and for me, I want to. There's a word that I've picked up in your profile, which at one stage was quite a buzzword, and that's disruption. And disruption is not something necessarily that happens out there. So I'm going to potentially throw a curveball and see how you handle it, John. Do you sit down and disrupt yourself? Do you sit down and think through how do I make myself better? How do I question whether what I'm doing right now is in fact still applicable, relevant, and value adding in the space that I'm in? Because you add a lot of value to a lot of people purely because of who you are. I mean, you come across as someone that really knows your stuff, and your track record is great and all that. But sometimes the older ways in which we did things are not necessarily as effective as they used to be. Or even maybe our approach or our view on the world, because things have changed significantly. How do you disrupt yourself and rethink? Because I think what has happened over this pandemic period, people have been talking about all these, again, cliches, pivoting and blah, 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 blah. But I mean, I'm just going to go down and say, look, anybody has to do it, no matter what you want to call it and the reason why. From time to time, you have to disrupt yourself and rethink how you put yourself out there, especially a guy that's so strong in sales and marketing and product and brand and all that type of thing in this space. Just give me your view on that, and how and when do you do that?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, but I mean, so self-disruption, yeah. So I've been through that, and it was so it started about 9 years ago. I had a conversation with my wife. We were out for a meal and talking about work, and we were going through another one of these deals. And I was saying, you know what, I would love to work in consulting, because I would like that kind of, the challenge there, or the perceived challenge that I kind of saw at the time, was the ability to work with different clients, solving different problems in different arenas, maybe every 6, 9, 12 months, that sort of thing, instead of solving the same problems with just different clients within the same environment at the corporate that I was at the time. So I kind of sowed the seed then, just as a thought, and just as kind of an expression of a future state, shall we say. And then lo and behold, 3 years later, so this was 2019 now, and I wasn't really, well, we weren't anywhere near the pandemic at the time, but I'd been involved in a project where we had brought on some external clients, sorry, external consultants, and almost as a kind of incidental, got chatting to a couple of people and saw this as an opportunity to explore what disruption might look like, to take your phrase. And then having some conversations with them about the reality of consulting, the reality of the kind of projects they work on, that helped fleshed out what we were, what I'd imagined at the time, and gave me a bit more of a reality check, shall we say. And as a result of that, I had a couple more opportunities at work kind of completed. It felt like I kind of wrapped up some more projects, and that came to a point where I was really ready to move on and take that step into consulting. So the self-disruption seed had been sown a few years before, but the opportunity came along that kind of forced myself to take that leap, to say, yes, this is what I want to do. Or if I take the leap and it doesn't work out after 12 months, I've always got something to go back to. But I feel like this is an opportunity I don't want to miss. And so however you call it, whether it's a pivot or disruption, for me, I'd never, I haven't looked back. It was 4.5 years ago. I've thrived since then. I've honestly never been busier. I've had some really, really interesting, challenging projects. I've met some fascinating people I would never have met before. And yet I'm meeting those kind of new people, new projects every 9, 12 months. And so I feel reinvigorated. I feel really passionate about what I can bring to the different clients that I engage with, but that I'm learning so much as well with every single project. So to give you a sense of the type of different projects I work on, in the last couple of years, I've worked on B2B distribution that I've talked about, oil and gas. I've worked on water utilities. I've just finished off a software business integration project. I've just kicked off an engineering acquisition program. So there are all sorts of businesses that I've engaged with. There's an architectural business I've worked with in the past as well that have consolidated some practices. So the mix and the breadth of my experience have just exploded in the last few years in a way that I would never have imagined. And so I'm thankful for that self-disruption. And some of it was thought out and having that conversation, not only with my wife at the time, but following it up with some mentors for sure, but also taking the opportunity to talk to consultants when it arose, then kind of really steeled my nerve and said, yeah, I'm going to commit to this.
Yeah, I noticed the smile and the twinkle in your eye and and the passion that came out of that, and I think that's exactly right. And that's, I think, is part of the journey of life, is to find your purpose. It might take longer than you expect. I mean, many of us, start in a place we think we belong. And I mean, I just see my children right now. I mean, they all at that place where they think they should be. And they're trying different things. One or two of them not that sure yet. But I know that in theory, work is going to change. Jobs that existed 20 years ago don't exist today anymore. Jobs that exist today are not going to exist in 10 years' time. And there are a few things that never change. And those are the principles, the fundamentals of life, really. And then that's to find your passion, to find your purpose. And I think it's a special calling. It's like that mentee of yours that education is their calling, their purpose, and they followed that, and now they're doing incredibly well. And I think the same is true for you, where you've now followed what you see as your purpose, and you flourishing, which is fantastic. I want to just go down to onto the personal side of things, and maybe just for a moment, have a look at how do you keep yourself sane or balanced, or I'm not sure if there is such a word, but how do you keep yourself going, staying passionate, high energy, all that type of thing, if if that's possible. But it's work, because this kind of vocation, or this kind of career choice, does demand a lot from you. It demands a lot of time and energy, focus. Often it's quite stressful. You're dealing with people of different types, and you're being thrown into different arenas all the time. How do you sort of keep yourself on the up and up, and how do you keep yourself sort of level and level-headed, if that's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, no, it's a real challenge, isn't it? Particularly in this environment where when we're working from home, we're more accessible to our clients and our employers, right? So, you know, a Teams call or a text or an email comes along, and you feel compelled to answer that. But for me, it's about, you know, I've got a family, I've got a lovely wife and 3 wonderful children, so it's making time for them. I try and pick a new hobby every year as well. So last year I started paddleboarding, and this year I'm doing some other stuff, and it's just nice to make sure that you've got your head and interests in other places, so that when you come back to work, you're reinvigorated, you're refreshed. Perhaps also you've got, you know, a new way of looking at something because you just took some time out and refreshed. But discipline as well, and having good habits, managing your time really well. Obviously, the demands of our clients mean sometimes that we're working longer hours on a particular day because of milestones and deadlines we're working to. But other times it's about, you know, having habits that means that you switch off at 6 o'clock in the evening and sit around the table with the family, and have a good conversation, and then you can get out and do your hobby, do a bit of reading, and then tidy up your emails at the end of the day. Having good habits that you stick to. I've got a calendar that not only, I'm sure we all have, not only mixes my work but my personal calendar, that other people can see, and they know when I'm easily when I'm available or not. So it's about, and then having the discipline to stick to that, right? And as often as we want to say yes to everything, it's also good practice to say no to some things as well. But yeah, other than that, it's, you know, maintaining curiosity, asking the right questions, having lots of energy, enthusiasm around people, that sort of thing.
Yeah, because it's this constant conflict between slipping into a comfort zone and staying challenged, and still being disruptive to a certain extent, taking on new challenges, enjoying life, staying curious, but still, you know, sticking to something that you know. It's just, I think it's a life of paradox. It's a life of constant conflict, and I mean, that's just the way I'm experiencing it myself anyway. But I think the purpose.
One thing I'll just throw in that comes to mind, particularly on the back of COVID, and we've had, you know, almost 2 years of the lockdowns, and something that's really been forefront for me engaging with other people is about mental health, and for us to be aware that, you know what, if I went and played football and I broke my ankle or I had an injury, I'd talk about it, and it'll be something that I could kind of have a bit of banter with on the end of a call like this, or on a Teams call with the team. But you know what, if we're not doing well mentally, we need to create a safe space for people to feel that they can actually express that and say, you know what, I'm not there today, or, you know, I've got stuff going on, or, you know, we need to encourage people that it's okay to not be mentally okay every now and again, and to give people that safe space to feel that they can express that. And I've seen that in the last couple of years at close personal quarters with some colleagues. And so I'm always conscious to make sure I kind of ask those questions where people can feel free to say, you know what, no, I'm actually not really okay. And then deal with that, or point them in the right direction, or say a few words that might help them, but then give them an opportunity to have some rest. So we just need to be more aware, I think, of people's mental health than ever before.
Yeah, it's not that the problem never existed, but it's now the awareness is definitely come up and be more evident. As we come to the end, we got sort of 1.5, 2 minutes left. Jon, it's been a fantastic hour, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I really just want to sort of end off with what are the sort of golden sort of takeaways, 1 or 2 nuggets, if you like, and then sort of just tell us about you, your company. How would people get hold of you, you know, if they want to speak to you? So, I mean, let's start with a few sort of 1 or 2 wise words, and then tell us a bit about your company and how people can get hold of you.
Okay, so in terms of key takeaways, planning is really essential. Start with a plan, understand where you want to get to, have a strategy, ask all the right questions of the people that you're going to be dealing with, both at the target and at the parent company. And in terms of the business I work with a company called Global PMI Partners. We specialize in helping companies get through the acquisition and then into the 100 days afterwards with the post-merger integration, and making sure that you successfully achieve your objectives strategically. And you can contact us by going on to gpmip.com. You can find me, Jon Burke, on LinkedIn. I think my LinkedIn profile is Jon P. Burke. And yeah, I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody on these kind of topics. But you know what? The key takeaways are going to be planning, strategically thinking about the future, and communication is key in everything that you do, both internally and externally.
That's fantastic, Jon. Thank you very much for joining us today. I really, really do appreciate your time. The effort that you've gone through, I think technically has probably been one of the challenging ones. I just want to say thanks again. Please stay on the line. I just want to say goodbye to our audience, and then yes, let's have a quick wrap up once we've said goodbye. Just stay on the line.
Thanks, Dudley. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you, guys. Okay, thank you, Jon. Okay, that was another episode of 100 Days and Beyond, the podcast, the episode I think that highlights the sales and marketing, I would say, work stream, but also the leadership, the experience, the understanding about the way things work out in the marketplace. I'm absolutely loving that this discussion we've just had. There's so much to do in an M&A or in the merger acquisition, even in the integration side of things, around multiple aspects. Jon has done a great job in explaining and sharing his experience and his views on this wonderful world. And again, for me, although Jon, he comes across passionately, I'm sure he's in real life he's incredibly humble, and I'm in awe often with the wealth of experience, knowledge, and breadth and depth of the human beings that do this kind of work. And again, for me, this podcast is dedicated to those who are, for me, the unsung heroes of the M&A work that make the world turn. I think that make the world exist in the way that we see it, make companies successful. Those that acting those leadership positions, bringing people through the system and helping people in their own careers. And yes, I think the last point that one of the last points that Jon made was about mental health, being more aware of people, of their circumstances, and just understand that we're dealing with real people. It's not just a balance sheet or a financial statement that we're working with. We're working with real people, real business, and communities that are affected by these businesses too. Thanks again for joining us today. Join us on the next episode of 100 Days and Beyond, and we wish you all the best, and really stick to it. Everything that happens well, and thank you so much. All the best. Hi everybody, this is Dudley again, and if you need help with a future or existing post-merger integration, I want to invite you to arrange a free, no obligation meeting with us. During the meeting, we'll find out exactly what you need, what your challenges are, and we'll explain how our unique PMI slipstream method can help you. Simply call us or visit mergerintegration.co.uk. It's mergerintegration.co.uk, or come to our website, skillfulpursuit.com.